Welcome to the Stadium Journey podcast. We are proud to be part of the HIAC Talk Radio Network. Thanks for joining us tonight. Stadium Journey is the internet leader, if you didn't know, in stadium reviews for the traveling sports fans. We've got over 2,300 stadium, ballpark, and arena reviews on our website, stadiumjourney.com. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Stadium Journey. And the Stadium Journey podcast and HIAC's other podcasts, we got, what do we got? We got wrestling. We got other stuff here and there and everywhere. You can find all that at thebradyhicks.com, or you can look us up on VOC Nation, on iTunes Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Type in HIAC Talk Radio Network. Follow us on Twitter at HIAC Talk Radio. And if you'd rather watch your sports talk, all of our podcasts are now available on YouTube for your viewing pleasure at youtube.com/DanLaw83. And we now have our own YouTube channel on Stadium Journey, too. So you can find our video versions of our podcast there, too. And let me take a minute and introduce the starting lineup for our podcast today. We've got Dave Cotney. You can follow him at ProFan9. Mark Viquez can be followed at Ballpark Hunter. You can follow our producer, the above-average comedian, Dan Calachico, at DanLaw83. And I am Paul Baker. You can follow me at PuckmanRI. And we're going to be joined tonight by Mike Farwell, the voice of the Kitchener Rangers of the Ontario Hockey League. Mike will be joining us in just a little while. So first, what we're going to do is recap where we've been since we all last got together. So, Mark, you want to start us off? Where have you been over the last fortnight?
Fortnite.
I love using that word.
Fortnite. Playoffs. Well, what I like about traveling is that sometimes you wind up in places you have no plan on heading to. You just show up there and there's a game and everything works out. I went to 4 different Indiana high school gymnasiums in one day. I did not have this plan the last time we talked, but I found out that one of the gyms was having a throwback game. That's kind of a thing here they do in Indiana. They have a scheduling conflict at their regular gym, and they go back to the old gym if it's still around. And most of the time, it's one of these historic gyms that was built, right before World War II or, WPA project. So I said, oh, that sounds like a cool thing to do. Where is this throwback game? It was in Mitchell, Indiana, which is about an hour and 45 minutes south here. But I had nothing else to do, and it was a Saturday afternoon, so I figured I'd do it. So I head down there. And looking at the schedule, I found out that another high school was having a game a little bit earlier that day at the BNL Fieldhouse, the BLN Fieldhouse, which is Bedford Lawrence North. 30 years ago, they had a stud player wind up winning the championship for the school in front of 30,000 people at the RCA Dome. And he put and I can't think of his name right now, and I'm sure somebody in Hoosierland is ready to just shoot me. His name draws a blank. Damon Bailey. You might remember him from 1990, but he was like a superstar in Indiana. Well, I went to the high school he made famous, and it's definitely not 1990 anymore. There wasn't quite a bit of people there, but it was a Saturday afternoon. Just was kind of dead as a doornail. The banners were hanging up, the trophies were there, the jerseys were hanging up. It was a big gym. Just wasn't Damon Bailey like. So unfortunately, those days are long gone. I'm sure sometimes I get big crowds, but Damon Bailey, if you want to talk about Hoosier hysteria, before Romeo Langford, this was the guy that everybody had to go see perform around the state. He was that good. I think he's the record holder, most points scored in Indiana basketball history.
Wasn't Damon Bailey the kid who was on Sports Illustrated when he was like 12 years old?
I don't know if he,
I remember.
I know that Bobby Knight saw him play in 8th grade and said he's probably our best guard right now. Like, he was taking a crack at his regulars on the team. He said Damon Bailey was that good at such a young age, and he wound up playing for Bobby Knight at IU. I don't know if he was on Sports Illustrated. I have not heard that. I know Rick Mount from Lebanon was on Sports Illustrated as a high school student back in 1966, but another legend. It's a legend up here as well. But I have to look that up. So if our engineer can look that up, Damon Bailey, he was on in the book A Season on the Brink that made that IU season popular. But yeah, Bedford Lawrence North, Damon Bailey, like those two just go hand in hand. Okay, did you find him?
No, he was on Sports Illustrated cover when he was in college, but nothing when he was in. I'm thinking of someone else.
Yeah, he never played in the NBA. He wound up playing in overseas in the Fort Wayne Fury of the CBA. He went back and coached, but he has a family business in the area, and he kind of keeps low key. He's just one of these, he's still a huge name when you talk about high school basketball here. But he just kind of keeps a low key profile. I know his son played, and I think Bailey also coached the women's team in Butler. So he has a little bit of an interesting history since his playing days are over. And I think he's still down in Bedford, just kind of hanging out, doing his thing. So that was my first gym. And then my second gym was the Emerson Gym, which used to be the home of the Mitchell Blue Jackets from 1927 to 1979. They decided to honor the 80th anniversary of their state finals team, regarded as the best team ever to play in Mitchell. And when I showed up there, they had a packed house. The girls were wearing cheerleading outfits from the 1940s. The boys were wearing throwback jerseys, even though they didn't look like throwback jerseys. But they had throwback warm-ups that said Cement City. And it was a really nice crowd. The gym is not what it used to look like. The picture that I saw heading down there had a balcony and had 2 rows of seating on the top level. Apparently that was taken out some time ago. And what you're left with is an older gym that looks fairly modern. It wasn't anything spectacular, but my goodness, the place was packed, and you just had a ton of people there screaming for the home team. It was a little bit different experience that I had expected. So I was going to be done for the day. I mean, I was done around 3 o'clock. I was going to turn around, go back home to Fisher's. And then I saw that another throwback game was taking place in Jasper, Indiana, which is home to former Philadelphia great Scott Rolen. Yeah. So anyway, I'm like, what the heck? I drive. I'm only an hour away. I'm heading down to this place. And thank God I went, because the Cabby O'Neill Gymnasium in Jasper, Indiana was worth the damn drive. Wow. Place was also packed. Beautiful gym. It looks exactly like it did back when it was in operation from 1939 to 1977, except for a few touches. They had they had former players from the 1971 to 75 sectional championship games there. This was a big to-do, and the fans are into it. The visiting team fans came out. The students from the visiting side came out as well. This was Hoosier hysteria at its finest. It wasn't completely sold out, but it was damn close. This is a gorgeous building. If you have not seen my video yet or my review, plenty of great pictures and film. This was the essence. This is what I wanted to see in Mitchell. This place in Jasper almost was knocked down 10 years ago. Community effort came in to save it. They don't play basketball there all the time. The last time they had a game there was 2012. I even talked to the AD. He said, it's nice to play games here. It's just a lot of work to get this together. And the reason why they played the game there is I think they had some sort of band state finals going on in their gym, which is this gigantic professional collegiate looking gym, which I have never been in that gym yet. But I mean, good Lord, this was a trip back in time. I loved every single minute of my time in Jasper.
Wow.
Loved it. Cabby O'Neill Gym. So I'm like, okay, well, let me drive home now. I'm 2.5 hours away from home. It's getting dark. Well, not yet. And then I realize I'm about 8 miles from the Huntingburg Memorial Fieldhouse, which sits 6,000 people. So why not let me drive there? Drive to the gym. It's one of these sunken bowl gyms. Looks very small on the outside, but when you walk in, it's this giant gym. Not a lot of people there. There was no cheerleaders. There were cheerleaders. There was no student section. The team from a visiting team was destroying the home crowd. Not a very exciting mood, but it's one of the big boys here in Indiana, so I had to go. So I'm glad I went because, like I said, it's a 2.5 hour, 2 hour and 45-minute drive. You got to hit as many gyms as you can with one fell swoop. So that's what I did. Only thing I did like about the Huntingtonburg gym, it was very well kept. I mean, all the banners were the same color, the same shapes. They had a nice little a lot of nice presentation on the walls. They also had something called, I think it was called Dolly Whip. It was this sort of ice cream type of dessert that came in tropical flavors. $2 for a little cup. It was quite nice. So 4 gyms, 1 day. I think I drove 320 miles round trip. And that's kind of what I like about doing this gig. You know, you get to check out places you don't normally go to. And believe you me, heading down to Jasper and Huntingburg, which it's quite a drive. It's not something you want to do all the time, but, you know, kind of makes you feel alive. You know, you want to do these you don't want to go someplace and say to yourself, wow, I should have went there. Kind of like this summer. I was 2 hours away from the World Series. I could have easily gone home the next day, but I decided to go to Omaha. So that's kind of what I did today. And I think this weekend I'll be in a similar situation up in the Chicagoland area. So we'll talk more about that later. So 1 day, 4 gyms. Knocked it all out.
That's a pretty cool day in my book.
Yeah.
So, Dave, you were actually in my neck of the woods. So it'd be cool to hear what you thought of some of the Boston area facilities you visited.
Yeah, I didn't have 4 gyms in 1 day, but I had 3. So yeah, it was off to New England area. So we started with getting our smart on, and we hit Harvard for Harvard Yale hockey at the Bright Landry Hockey Center. Interesting place. I was surprised, Paul, you had said that it was built in
1980.
1980.
First event there was a game against the United States hockey team.
Right. It looks like the way it's shaped from the inside, it looks a lot older. Right? It's the classic long hockey barn with the peaked roof, hardwood ceiling, you know, outside. Forget the concourse or atrium or whatever for a minute, but if you're just sitting in the side, it looks like it was built a lot earlier than 1980. Now, one thing that Harvard has done is they have done everything possible. They have covered like every square inch of wall with some piece of Harvardness, whether it is pictures from old teams. I think they had a picture of a team from 1899.
Every team they've had since the beginning of their hockey program is on the walls.
And obviously not as many pictures of the women's team, but one of the things that I got right away is that they. Sorry, I got muted there somehow.
That's all right.
I think Dan muted me. He didn't.
I didn't touch it. My hands are on an Xbox controller.
But yeah,
not that kind of controller.
One of the things that was interesting is I think they did everything within their power to make the women's team and the men's team look on equal planes. The banners are pretty much on equal planes. I think there are just about as many banners for the men's team as there are for the women's team. I think Tell me if I'm wrong. I think they each have a national championship, one.
Each have one. Yep.
The coaches lineage, there's a wall with coaches lineage. Now it's pretty cool when you could date your hockey team, back to 1899, and the total number of coaches is like 4.
Yeah, I think Ted Donato is the 4th coach in like 100 years of hockey there.
Now, one thing I did read that up till I think the 30s, the captains of the team coached them, so they basically coached themselves, which some might say is what's happening in the NBA today. I digress. But yeah, it was
No comment.
It seemed to be an older arena that had a lot going for it. There was a lot of stuff to look at, and Harvard not having a superior hockey program, I think, is a fair comment. But they really did their history justice, and yeah, it was a good time. Man, it was cold. The Canadian guy talking about how cold it was. I was talking in single digits Fahrenheit. Like that was really cold. So next day we were triple header bound. So we started off with one of your favorites, Paul, Matthews Arena. We saw Northeastern basketball there, which I think is a far cry from Northeastern hockey.
Absolutely.
It is definitely a basketball floor that's just basically dropped in the middle of the rink, and there's not a ton else going on. I don't know what that place would look like if it ever had anything remotely close to a sellout, because there are a ton of awful seats then. Really old school arena. One of the things I mentioned to you when I walked in, it felt like walking into a theater right away. It just had that kind of feel. The floor was carpeted, which is strange.
Yeah.
I was actually there for a basketball sellout like 3 or 4 years ago. Michigan State played a game while they were ranked number 1 at Matthews Arena, and it was sold out. It was unbelievable because I've been there a couple other times. And like your experience, Dave, it was maybe 1,000, 1,500 people. So
yeah. Still neat. There, like if you appreciate the oldness of it, it's unfortunate that they have this gaudy video board. You got how old's that place? 1930 something.
It's older than Fenway Park.
Okay.
1910, I think.
It's ridiculously old, and they have this like Dallas Cowboys like video screen, which just does not fit at all.
Yeah, the length of the whole basketball court, basically.
Yeah, it just does not fit at all. And if you're Matthews Arena is 2 decks, so you got your lower bowl and then an upper deck. Other than that, it seemed to be very similarly shaped to Bright Landry Hockey Center. But if you're in the last couple rows, you can't even see the video board because the overhang is blocking your view. So it's pretty useless. The other thing it does is it hides 2 of the neatest banners, which are the Celtics banner and the Bruins banner. They're almost hidden there because they're up in the
who cares?
Up in the giant video board. So yeah, it just didn't seem to fit. But it was cool. The leading scorer for Northeastern was from Ottawa, so my son and I were excited by that. And I did not know that Reggie Lewis had played for Northeastern. So that was kind of interesting.
That's actually where they held his funeral.
Wow. Huh. There you go. You learned something new. Stadium Journey podcast. From there, we headed to Chestnut Hill, and we saw the Boston College Eagles play hockey on Brian Giunta night. So I think I mentioned before when we had gone to Boston College football, the opportunity was there to walk around the rink when you're at the football game. And the rink jumped out at me right away. It was actually set up for hockey at the time, and I knew it was, kind of high on my college hockey bucket list then. And it just, with this trip, we tried to mash in as much as humanly possible, and it just all kind of worked out that way. So I had mentioned before that one of the things I thought was interesting is when they retire jerseys, they don't actually put the numbers up. There's only the one. David Emma.
I think you're talking
David
about.
Emma is the one guy who has his jersey retired, number 16. And Brian Giunta up there, they had his name. They had one of the things I don't like is that the basketball and the hockey banners are all kind of mixed up. They're all intertwined, and so men's hockey, and then the dates, and then instead of a number, it says retired jersey. So, I'd rather have the Stanley Cup on my banner than that. So, yeah.
No pictures.
But we had a good time there. I was a little disappointed in the crowd that it was not, it wasn't, full, because I was expecting full. And maybe it was because it was an afternoon game, and maybe it was because they were playing Merrimack, and Merrimack is terrible. And, but it was Brian Giunta Day, and he was there and did a little speech, and everybody clapped when he was done, and he was clearly not done. And the MC just cut him off and get off the Zamboni.
Start playing the music. Get him
Shut
off
up, Brian.
But we actually had to cut out a little bit early because we headed all the way down to Providence after that.
All the way.
Cut all the way.
45 minutes.
Well, it wasn't too bad, but
He drove from
would have been
Canada.
nicer. Huh?
He drove from Canada, Paul. It's like when I go up to Jersey, I go to the Camden County area, and then Mom's like, "You can come out." No, I'm not driving to Atlantic City. No, I already drove here. I'm in the state. You come see me.
So anyway, all the way down to Providence, and we hit the dunk for the Providence Friars, and that place was packed. Great atmosphere, salty crowd, probably the roughest college basketball crowd I've experienced. Usually it's much more jovial,
Not Rhode Island.
Yeah, I guess not. I actually did feel bad. My son was sitting beside this little girl. She had to be like 2 or 3 or whatever. And there's some kids up behind us, and
she was swearing up a storm.
cursing and swearing, and there's a dude down in front of us, and he's cursing and swearing, and it's like, holy moly. Funny enough, though, they played Seton Hall. Seton Hall ranked number 10 and won. And the students stormed the court, but there was like 2 seconds left on the clock, or no, less than 2 seconds left on the clock.
Premature
I think it
storming.
stopped with 1 point something. It was a 4-point lead. The ref should have just let it go. I don't know what he was thinking. But anyway, they had to clear the floor, all the students, and funny, I did hear some alumni talking on our way back to the car, and they were we're really disappointed in the students. As alumni, we had thought they would be better behaved or whatever. So it was interesting watching the security line up in front of the student section after that final play, because there was no way that they were letting anybody on the court after that. And these big dudes are just tossing kids left, right, and center as they're trying to rush the court after the official end. But yeah, the dunk totally feels like a product of its time. Dark concourses, narrow. It felt to me a lot like the Bradley Center. Not a lot of windows, and like you had said, Paul, should have seen it before the renos. But I would assume that the front entrance was kind of part of the renos.
A big part, yes.
Yeah, it seemed like a place that when they originally designed it had no front entrance. It was just
No, they had a
come in
big
from every
lobby, but it
corner.
was just very 70s looking.
Oh, okay.
Well,
And
that's
it's
the problem that's the problem with those 70s buildings. They were not designed to look pretty, just more functional.
Yeah.
So that's exactly. I was there in 1991, which probably had not changed by then. So, yeah, you could do all the renovations, but it still is a product of its time. And I agree with that.
Target Center too. Target Center would be another one that seemed very similar. Now, when they did their renos, they were taking walls down and putting windows up, and they did a lot. They did a lot there. I'm not sure it's.
I think it's good
translated, but
I think it's good for WNBA crowds. It still feels a little bit out of place when you compare it to the arenas in Toronto and Indianapolis and even Chicago. It just has a weird little feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I remember your comment was, well, you think that's bad. Just wait till you hit the XL Center. And that's where we were headed the next day. Except we did take a bit of a detour and we walked on the hallowed ground of North Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Although I'd like to know what sort of civil war involved the breaking off of Dartmouth and North Dartmouth. Did you guys have?
I think it's just a neighborhood. I actually don't think there's an official town of North Dartmouth.
But yeah, I got to see the famous Baker Man Cave and the Wall of Pucks, and it was pretty amazing. There's a lot of stuff there. There's so much stuff there. Paul said, to my son, he says, here's a closet. It's got all my double bobbleheads in it. You can go look in it and, take whatever you want. He looked in the closet, scared him. He wouldn't take anything out. But no, that's
damn it, I'm
cool.
trying to unload some stuff here.
But then it was off to the XL Center in Hartford for some Yukon basketball, and that was quite the atmosphere. They had packed that place, and it was a good game, and the crowd was right into it, and it was a great time, except for that dude from Memphis wearing the biker shorts.
I really wish you hadn't pointed that out to me, because then I couldn't unsee it, and all I could do was look at his junk.
Yeah, I was thankful being as far away as I was. You were far closer to the floor than I was. And I was like, man, that dude's like painted his shorts on his leg, and he had like really huge thighs, right? Like he had done some serious leg workouts.
His shorts were tight even by 80 standards.
Oh man, they were biker shorts. They were biker shorts. But whole narrow concourses in that place, really narrow. Oh my gosh. It was tight, and we got there pretty early, and we didn't even think about going anywhere at halftime. Forget it.
I know from being in that building, when there's a crowd of, say, 6,000 that you can't move at the XL Center, I couldn't imagine with a sellout crowd of 15,000 how anybody did anything at halftime.
Yeah. And maybe the highlight, Jackson and I tried the infamous Ted Steam cheeseburger, which was different. I was trying to explain it to one of the guys at school today, and I said, it was almost like a meatloaf burger, right? Like it had a total different taste to it, but it was good. Jackson absolutely loved it, and I was thankful he didn't spill it on himself. So. That was my whirlwind New England weekend.
So yeah, you guys, even though I was busy the last couple of weeks, you guys will put my travels to shame, because I just did a lot of places that I've been to many times before and have talked about many times. So I'm going to be very short here. Had some UMass Dartmouth basketball, had some Providence Bruins hockey, had some Boston Pride hockey. You know what? I will talk about that one for a second, because the Pride hockey was actually the NWHL All-Star game, which was tons of fun. I actually got to be as Dan called me on Obey the Puck last week, the master of ceremonies, because I am the in-arena voice. So got to do all the announcing, got to do the starting lineups, which was a big thrill, and talked up the skills competition and the All-Star game. So ton of fun. We had a standing room only crowd at Warrior Ice Arena, and I think 11,000 people watching on Twitch. And that was the same night that the PWPHA had a game in Anaheim, California with a sellout crowd at the Honda Center. So don't tell me nobody cares about women's hockey.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, we just need to see it on a regular basis. What are they going to do to get those crowds, or even half of those crowds, for regular season games?
I don't know why Twitch is so hard for people. They air the games. You press a button, you press play, you watch the games. That's how you see it regularly. And I'm just speaking in general. Dave, go for you.
Yeah, those are impressive numbers.
So one of the things that surprised me, and we actually drove by the Warrior Ice Arena, and maybe you can explain the venue a little bit more, Paul. You said there was a sellout crowd of about 1,000.
Yeah.
That place is huge. There's got to be more going on than just that arena that they're playing in.
Well, that's the Bruins training facility, so it's got all their Bruins stuff. But it's the way it's set up is it overlooks the Massachusetts Turnpike. So what you saw, you drove by and saw the giant window that runs the length of the arena part with the giant 18-foot tall Bruins logo on the window. So there's no seating on that side. All the seats are on the other side of the rink that look out towards the windows. And it would be awesome if it had a good view instead of a view of the Turnpike.
I love the Turnpike views.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not a huge place, but there's a lot of offices there and training rooms and stuff like that.
So you're saying there's two separate female leagues?
No,
No, you said there was an Anaheim and then it was Boston.
Oh, you must listen to Obey the Puck more often, Mark.
I missed it this
basically week. the top women's players who made up the U.S. and Canada national teams, and like maybe the next year down, are basically saying that, you know what, we had this league, but it's not paying us enough. We're gonna hold out and we're gonna force somebody
I know
to
that.
help us create a real league with livable wages.
Yeah.
So they have split off. They formed their own union, the PWPA, and they've been doing kind of a touring thing.
Okay.
They've played in a few cities, and they've had some U.S. versus Canada games. And the game last weekend was the culmination of that series. And meanwhile, the NWHL has soldiered on. They've got 5 teams.
Yeah.
So it's probably not the big names in women's hockey, but it's the next level down. Still some fantastic talents there, and they were all on display at the All-Star game. And while they have been able to attract added sponsorship and increased salary and stuff like that, it's still all the women still have to have day jobs. It's not. It's, I guess you would maybe call it a semi-pro league.
Well, it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and what the other players are fighting for is a full-time league where this can be our job. We can be pro hockey.
Yeah. And it's kind of like here at Stadium Journey. What can we do to make this our full-time job?
Well, up to you, our listeners.
You have to have people who. Never mind. Never mind.
Just people that like to enjoy.
I just want to say to everybody who is listening, who writes for Stadium Journey, who hasn't, it's not hard to hit the share button. I'm just going to say that. And if that pisses you off, don't bother replying. I don't care. I mean that. You support I ran into this issue with the wrestling podcast, and I don't care about my notoriety. I'm not doing this for me. So let's just get that out of the way. I'm not doing this for my notoriety. It's not hard to hit the share button. Especially if you're part of the website. How many writers you got? I see 4 people share this goddamn thing. And that's embarrassing. Don't put your name on something if you're not going to participate 100%. It's annoying to see that. And I just wanted to say that. I'm not calling any one person out. I see a lot of people participating, but I see a lot more not. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's just like when writers, write an article or a review. I try to share that with as many types of Facebook groups that I can. So if it's, I don't know, somebody had a review of I can't even think of the basketball team, but I found out there was a Portuguese fan group. I shared it with them. I don't know if they're going to read it, but who knows? We may get some fans from Lisbon checking into Stadium Journey. So when we all share, we all win, because that leads people to the website and to the great content that we have. And we have a lot of great stuff up there. I mean, the other day I was posting a review and I saw 6 articles ahead of me. It's like, dang, that's impressive. So we got a lot of people doing some good work. I try to share as much as I can. I do have a full-time job, but I find time. So it's any help anybody can give sharing this podcast, it's appreciative.
And we do appreciate everybody who listens regularly and does share our work, but we want more. We want more. We want to be the next ESPN, right?
Do we?
Let's not be.
Maybe not ESPN.
No, because then we couldn't talk about hockey.
No, we couldn't talk about hockey. As long as Carrie Champion is my co-host,
we'd have to talk about LeBron James 24/7.
LeBron James, how great the All-Star game was.
It was fine, guys. It's all right.
It was fine. I enjoyed it.
I didn't get to see the All-Star game, but I heard it was pretty cool.
No, it was, yeah. I mean, maybe baseball will do that now. They'll have, some wacky ninth inning where they use an 8-ball instead of a white ball that's worth 8 points. 8 runs like MTV used to do.
Maybe they'll let the batters use buzzers. Oh, wait. They already
there you
did
go. Oh, they already did that. Oh,
only
that's
on
another
one
story.
That's only 2 teams. All right.
You know darn well other teams were cheating. The Astros got caught.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it
I
at
think
that.
Astros are cheating more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's
Cheating more
legal
than-
as long as you don't get caught.
That's right. That's right. And I think players need to let it go. Nobody's going to take away the
Oh, absolutely not. No. Bean them. No. I'm just saying. Oh, I'm absolutely saying this. This is the commissioner's. The MLB
I agree.
made
They
up.
handled this probably the worst way the commissioner can handle something.
They handled this. Manfred is an idiot. I'm saying that.
Commissioner right now.
He's the worst. He is. Oh my. I finally found somebody I hate more than Gary effing Bettman.
Yeah.
He is an
That's what a lot of people are saying.
idiot for handling it the way he does. And his stance where he basically, in front of God and everybody, said, I'm going to punish these people for retaliation. Not so much the guys that cheated and got caught very badly cheating. Just those. I hope every team throws at somebody's head. Let the blood.
How is that different from any other day, right? Like, how often do the players get punished for playing poorly? They don't.
No.
The coaches get fired. The GMs get fired.
There's
right?
no accountability. There's no accountability for players that are half-assing it, and there's no accountability for the shoddy MLB of officiating. I was told you can't fix officiating in any sport, so I'm not allowed to talk about that.
I think it's funny that Pete Rose came out of the woodwork and said, see, look at these guys. They're terrible. I'm terrible. Let me in.
Well, it's like a murderer. It's like a murderer throwing shade at a rapist.
What Pete Rose did is worse than what the Astros did.
No, it's not. I think he should have been in 20 years ago.
That's unfortunately, yeah.
I think we should unban the Black Sox.
I would love for that to happen. I would love Shula's show to be in the Hall of Fame. The White Sox can make a statue of him out there in Sox Park with Harold Baines and Carlton Fisk.
I am absolutely being sincere in that word. Unban the Black Sox. When you're holding both of them, I don't care. Get them back in the books.
Come back to baseball.
Come back to life. Build a cornfield. Knock it down. Get them back.
Well, they're playing this year in Iowa. Who knows?
You know what I mean. Get them into the books and God damn it. Oh, the MLB looks so stupid. He's created a problem. Manfred has created a huge problem, and the only people that are going to suffer, well, not the Phillies because they have no pitching.
Zach Wheeler.
If you name him one more time, Mark.
He says he's going to win the Cy Young.
Goody gumdrops.
He keeps saying that. He probably will see. He'll probably throw a no-hitter against the Mets.
All right. Thanks for listening to our travels for the past couple of weeks, and we are very happy now to be joined by Mike Farwell. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The voice of the Kitchener Rangers of the Ontario Hockey League. Mike, Thanks for joining us. And would you like to shout out where our listeners can follow you on social media before we get going?
Happy to do that, and thanks for having me along with you guys. On Twitter at Farwell_OHL, and Instagram is at Farwell_WR. I like to keep you guessing with all the letters after the name.
Right. Not all of us can have a consistent brand like Puckman RI.
Exactly.
So I'm going to start off because a lot of our listeners are from south of the border. So I just want, if you could, for a second, just explain the difference between the Canadian system of junior hockey and what people in the United States may be used to, where people play, they'll play high school and college, then maybe pro. What's different in Canada? Because you work for one of the premier junior league teams in the country.
Yeah, I think what we'd call it is NCAA hockey on steroids. Is that allowed? No, I would say that just to stoke the flames between the two. Between the two leagues, the NCAA and the Canadian Hockey League. But really, there's not a huge difference insofar as the age of the players are 16 to 20. They're drafted when they're 15 years old. They come into the Canadian Hockey League. I guess the greatest differences would be insofar as their eligibility to leave the Canadian Hockey League and go on to do other things. We know that, in the NCAA, for example, if you set foot into a Canadian Hockey League game, you get like a $50 a week stipend, and that makes you a professional in NCAA's eyes, and you can't go back and play NCAA. They're not quite that strict here, but the brand of hockey is very high level. If you ever watch the World Junior Hockey Tournament around Christmas time, which I know is a big tournament for fans of hockey before players go pro, you're seeing exactly the same kind of thing here with our league that you'd be seeing down there.
All right, and I know most of well, maybe not so much now, but traditionally, the majority of players who end up in the NHL went through the junior pipeline.
Absolutely true. And that's one of the things I love about this league. I've been in it for a number of years now, and I love watching guys who come out of this league and then what they end up doing in the pros. And we play the game all the time now, right? I'm like an amateur scout. I'm supposed to be doing play-by-play, but I follow these players and I try to pick them out. Is this guy going to make it? And he's never going to make it. Holy crap, he made it. Like, you just get yourself surprised once in a while. Other times you think you're a genius because you nailed it, that sort of thing. But I love watching them at this level before they're spoiled by all the money, by all the fame and glory, and they're just out there playing the game to try to make it to that next level.
Yeah, kind of the same reason I love college and minor league hockey down here in the States.
Absolutely.
So for those of you who are watching on Twitch, Mike's got a connection to our panel. You and Dave actually went to the same high school a few years apart. Am I right?
Man, and I just learned that tonight. If I had known this beforehand, I never would have come on this thing, because what makes it more interesting is that not only did we attend the same high school, but my father was our principal. Emphasis on our. So try going through your high school years with your father being the principal of your high school. It was bad enough for Dave, I'm sure. It sucked for me.
Can't imagine.
Well, I just thought of this. You and your dad have something really special in common. I mean, other than that you're father's son. You are.
It's very
If
simple.
I remember correctly, your dad had more hair than that when you was at St. Jerome. But you are following a local legend, right? On the radio, following Don Cameron. I've talked about Don Cameron on the podcast before. And if I have my lineage right, your dad followed a high school legend. Is that it? Do I have that right? Was your dad following Father Mike as Prince?
Yeah, you've got that exactly right, Dave. And it's really interesting because at the Catholic high school, the all-boys high school that you and I attended with the uniforms, the blues and grays and everything.
Loved it. It was awesome.
You knew what you were wearing every day. There was not a whole lot of decision-making being done before you left the house. But my father, in succeeding Father Mike Kendari as principal of St. Jerome's High School, became the first layperson to be principal of that high school. Up until my father, they had been priests every single year or every single term. So my father was the first layperson, and Father Mike was legend is a great word to describe him. And what's neat for me, I knew Father Mike. He was there for my grade 9 year before my father took over as principal. Father Mike was killed tragically in a car crash up near North Bay, where it's actually his hometown. And now when I'm doing games with the Kitchener Rangers and I travel to every rink in the Ontario Hockey League, North Bay is one of the stops. And Father Mike is in the North Bay Sports Hall of Fame because not only was he an educator.
Now I got to go back.
You do the stuff of legend. Well, if you follow on Twitter at @Farwell_OHL, I usually take a picture while I'm up there for all of the folks back in Kitchener that knew him as the principal. He was big into football. And again, that's the main reason he's in that Sports Hall of Fame up in North Bay. But it's neat for me to be able to check out that little monument to Father Mike when I'm up in North Bay with the Rangers.
Yeah, and now most of our listeners probably don't know this. Junior hockey in Canada is a little backwards. So for your position, you went from TV to radio, and that's the step up, right? So no, most junior hockey here is on community television, which, I mean, you know far better than I do, but in many cases it's volunteers here, there, and everywhere. I mean, it's not a huge money-making ordeal, I don't think. And definitely the pecking order would be to do what you do, play-by-play on the radio, following the legendary Don Cameron. That's a step up from doing the community television.
Yeah, it is. And just a quick note on the legendary Don Cameron, because I want to share this with as many people as I can. One of these days, I'm going to get off my duff and start the paperwork. I'm not so good at paperwork. That's why I got into radio. But I truly believe that Don Cameron should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder, because just let me put this out into the internet for you, into cyberspace. More than 4,000 games broadcast. Like, unless you're Vin Scully, I don't think there's a broadcaster in sports that did more games than Don Cameron did. 53 years as the voice of one hockey team. I don't think there's a person that touched him in terms of the number of games and the number of years spent with one organization in the Canadian Hockey League. So I think that's Hall of Fame worthy. And I truly mean, I'm going to get going on that paperwork at some point down the road. But to your point, Dave, about the structure here, yeah. And it's really kind of too bad, because I think the game should get as much exposure as any game here in this country at this level. But the way it's done is with a hodgepodge of local, community-based, volunteer-driven television stations. So for me, in 2000, I guess it would have been 2010, 2011, when I had the opportunity to switch over from doing TV games to doing radio games, it doubled my workload automatically, because every game is done on the radio, whereas there tends to be a local crew for the TV games. And even then, they don't do every single game. So 68 game season, you might do 34. You're probably doing closer to 29 or 30. With radio, you go on the road, you do every single game, and you develop that you get that connection to the team. You become the home broadcaster of that team. And so you're extended family with the hockey club.
Yeah. Three voices of my youth, probably the same voices of your youth. So, you're supposed to go to bed, you turn the radio on, and it was three people I listened to. It was Don Cameron, it was Joe Bowen, and it was Tom Cheek. Those were the three voices of my youth.
I'm with you 100% on all that. And I have to admit, I would cheat sometimes on Sunday nights, and I'd flip over to Chum FM for their top 30 countdown. And I would listen to that on Sundays if there wasn't a game going on somewhere. And I'd be listening to the music as well.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit broader. Let's go into the OHL abroad. You've said you've been to all 20 current OHL venues. I'm sure you've been to some of the other ones that are no longer with us or no longer in the rotation. What are some of your favorites, and what makes them your favorites?
Well, you have to understand now, Dave, I've been at this for enough years that I've become a real cynic. So in part, I base my favorites on who's got the best spread in the media room, or
I can relate to that line of thinking, Mike.
Man, I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you.
Butler, terrible spread. Okay, never mind.
And in other cases, it's who's got the best the best creature comforts for actually getting the job done. For example, I love Owen Sound. It's the smallest market in the Ontario Hockey League. And there's a real charm when you go to that old building, the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Center. Some call it the Bayshore, others call it the Lummer. but it's just chock full of character, and I love it. And I love that it's the little market that could. But you get there and you're crammed into this little corner of the broadcast booth, and you've got next to no room to work, and it makes it a little difficult, to be honest with you. One of our jobs there is what we refer to as flag duty, because the American flag is draped from our corner of the broadcast booth. So after they do the anthem, we have to reel the flag in and tie it off so it's out of the way so we can see down on the ice to do the games.
Is that when they put the big Slapshot logo up beside on the TV when you're pulling up the American flag?
They might as well, right? It's part of the charm. It's part of the charm. But if I were to look at these buildings now and pick out favorites, I honestly, I'm completely biased, but I think the cathedral that we have here in Kitchener is still absolutely one of the best. It turns 70 next year, but everybody refers to it as a mini Maple Leaf Gardens. So if you ever knew the old Gardens, which is now a grocery store for crying out loud in Toronto, but the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium is one of the absolute gems. And then the newer ones in London, Windsor, Kingston, the Sioux, real nice, great sight lines from a broadcast perspective, and nice junior hockey arenas, seating for about 5,000. London's even bigger. You can get 10,000 in there, almost 10,000 for a hockey game, but it's the perfect size for junior hockey.
Now, I've toured a few Ontario hockey leagues myself, but a lot of them are gone. I love the Windsor Arena, and I love the old Ice House in London. Number one, have you been to any of them, and what were your thoughts about those two classics?
Yeah, the Ice House in London only one time. So I don't, and I believe it was in the Ice House where they had the dubious distinction of winning 3 games one year, the OHL low the London Knights did. I think that was where they were. So not as much with the Ice House, but the old Windsor Arena, many times in there. And what I loved about that is the fans, to get to their seats in the lower bowl, they walked behind the players' bench. Like, what is going on? What were you thinking when that was allowed to happen? And there were times, as I'm sure you're aware, that that didn't always go over so well the game.
And I noticed when I was there, the players walked from the dressing room to the ice through the concourse. So volunteers or workers had to put up these wooden slabs to protect you from mingling with the players. And I saw that in Bowling Green as well when I was there a few months ago. But I guess back in the 1920s when that was built, maybe that was the norm.
Yeah, and you just didn't think about the way things evolved and fan behaviors evolved. I had a similar situation up in Sault Ste. Marie in the old Memorial Gardens there, and we had to take a ladder to get up to the press box. And it was like it wasn't a fixed ladder. There was one leaning against the wall. You lean it up, you go up to the press box. Well, one night we're there, and the Rangers beat the Greyhounds. And it might not surprise you that I couldn't get out of the press box because the took my ladder away.
They took the ladder away. You get down.
I had to wait for somebody in the arena staff to come by and give me my ladder back. It's too high to jump. I would break an ankle. I can't.
Wow.
Crush your fingers and bleed.
How high do you think it was?
Well, you would have been on above the top row of seats. So yeah, it was an 8-foot ladder that got jumped there, right? So yeah, I wasn't jumping down.
No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Wow, that's an incredible story. A ladder to get up to the press box. I don't think I've been at minor league ballparks that were built in the 30s where you have to climb up on the roof and you feel like you're, going to fall through the roof, but never a situation like that. So that's a great story to hear.
So I think one of my most underrated favorite arenas out there is in the OHL, and that's the Sudbury Community Arena. It's just so, it's just as old as the Odd, but very, very, very different. It's like the old school hockey barn. You just feel like you could hear that bearded guy in Slapshot playing Lady of Spain, and but probably the most unique thing I think I've ever seen is the Sudbury Wolves. They have this wolf hanging from the ceiling, and not a faux mascot or anything like that, like a real taxidermy wolf. And it's almost like it's on a pulley system. So when the Wolves score, some dude's job is to pulley the wolf, and it goes out over the visitors bench, and it sort of swings around, and then they pull it back. And I've heard that they are close to getting a new arena or what, but like it is going to be a must do trip to hit the Sudbury Arena one more time before that place goes.
Dave, I'm with you 100%, and you describe it so incredibly well. It's funny you mentioned the Wolf in Sudbury, because as luck would have it, just this past week, my Facebook memory popped up with a trip that I had taken, and I often share on my social media feeds the visiting arenas because people are really interested in this sort of thing. What's it like? What's it like behind the scenes? So the old Yardman Arena, I call it the old Yardman. Well, it's now CAA Arena in Belleville, where the Belleville Senators play in the AHL. But anyway, back when the Belleville Bulls were in the Ontario Hockey League, and my memory reminded me that they used to have a bull's head, not a taxidermy bull's head, just this plastic thing on the wall, but it had red eyes that would light up when the Belleville Bulls would score a goal. And it's just so, it just adds that charm. But I'm with you in Sudbury, that the same cornerstone as the Memorial Auditorium, 1951, it was built. It hasn't aged quite as well, but the roof is wood beam. It's beautiful. They've got some great history there. When you look up in the rafters, Joe Bowen's name already came up on this discussion tonight. He called games up there. Ron Duguay's name is from the rafters. Randy Carlisle's name is in the rafters there. But that wolf, I swear by sweet Sonny Jesus, it's the same damn wolf since 1951. That thing is mangy, it's ratty, it needs some shampoo, but it does. Somebody
it's
wheels
awesome.
It's fantastic, and I've seen opposing players. It was, in fact, I can tell you, it was Darby Llewellyn, the former Kitchener Ranger, after he scored a goal. No, because it was coming out. So the Wolves had scored a goal. He sat on the bench and used his stick as if it was a rifle and pretended to shoot the stuffed wolf. My broadcast partner and I are begging with Sudbury, because you mentioned the new arena that's not too many years away now. We're begging with the Wolves organization to take the wolf with them or get a new wolf.
Absolutely.
And when they score, we want laser beams coming out of the eyes. We want a show, right? Like, just let's update it for the new century.
So since we're on the odd, locally, we had and I was telling the guys this, we had a 3-day feature article in the local paper about it being time for a new odd. And I listened to you on your podcast with your partner, and I've heard some of the stuff on the radio, and there's a lot of people that are really pro new odd. I am definitely not one of them. And the spots that they're comparing to are London, are Niagara, but and you can tell us what your thoughts are. And I think I know you've got sort of two different categories. The one is like the feasibility, will it really sort of happen, and then maybe another is do we think it should happen? To me, you're going to take the best arena in the whole league and the best experience in the league, and you're going to put Kitchener in the middle of the pack with everybody else. I just don't see it. If you really are that upset that Shania Twain and Cirque du Soleil aren't coming to Kitchener, which I personally don't think they're coming anyway, since Toronto is, a hop, skip, and a jump up the road. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the idea of replacing the odd?
Well, it hurts. It absolutely hurts. I'm born and raised in this city. I've been going to that rink my entire life. And you're right. I meant what I said. Bias notwithstanding, it still stands up as the best barn on the circuit. And in fact, as soon as this conversation started in the city of Kitchener, I was at a Rangers game, and one of the scouts came up to me and said, Are you bleeping kidding me? Are they talking about replacing this building? Why would they do that? It's the best building in the league. Because it's a hockey arena, and it feels like a hockey arena, and it's got the history, and it's got the character, and it's got the charm. But the reality is, in 2020, and let's say 2030, by the time the new arena is ready to open, probably even later than that. Times have changed. Times have changed in cities, and they are in the market for revenue generation through hosting big tournaments, be they hockey, curling, or otherwise, hosting trade shows and conventions, hosting concerts, etc. And cities of a large size. We're a community now of over 600,000 people, and just a report this past week talked about our community being one of the fastest growing in the entire country. So elected officials look at something like that and look at the opportunity that a larger state-of-the-art facility could bring. And there is an argument to be made from an economic perspective, how that becomes an economic driver for a community. So if you take the emotion out of it, then you recognize that there's a pretty strong case to be made for a new arena in Kitchener. And you also have to, as much as you love it, Dave, as much as you love it, you have to also recognize that at some point, it does become the law of diminishing returns, right? At 70 years old, at some point, you're going to start spending more money to maintain it, because you can't expand it anymore. You just can't do that. The last expansion they did in 2011, 2012, that was it. There's no more room to add on to the existing building. So at what point then do you realize that, okay, we're sinking, and I'll just throw out a number, but $4 or $5 million a year into something that generates us 1.2 in revenue, and it becomes the law of diminishing returns. So it's a cold reality when you look at it financially, but there's an economic argument to be made for a new arena, and I'm with you. It'll look like everything else, and it'll feel like everything else, and it no longer lets Kitchener stand apart.
Well, there was probably an economic argument to replace Fenway Park, but that didn't happen.
Good point.
Over
should
50
have.
years ago too, because they were going to build a stadium to host the Red Sox and the Patriots, and that was, I think, 1967.
Oh, you're going way back on that one, Mark.
Go way back on that one.
I'm talking about like 10 years ago. There was a plan to replace Fenway.
Oh, exactly. But I mean, they've been talking about that, for over 50 years. So yeah, I get where you're going. With by the end of this decade, do you think there'll be a new arena in town, or does somebody say this is our hockey arena? There's other like, how far are you away from other junior hockey venues? Because when I think of the OHL, I just think about a bunch of cool arenas close to each other. How far are the division rivals, I guess, from Kittinger?
Hey,
Yeah.
just wait. If you watch,
Kitchener.
I'll throw and hit one from here.
It's like does Kitchener need one? Could they just say, hey, this is our hockey rink. This is where hockey's all about. If Shania Twain wants to perform, or Circus Olay, or Avril Lavigne, they can go someplace else.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a great point. And I think the Fenway Park example is a terrific example. Been there, love it, can't wait for my next trip. In fact, I'm going to be there this summer, so save me a seat, please.
Well, let me know. I'm there all the time.
All right.
It'll be
you got it.
terrible. Plenty of seats.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Easy. But yeah, that it's something that I think the kind of sentimentality is being taken out of it. Your question on how close is the next geographic rival? We are spoiled. We're spoiled here in
That's what it
Kitchener.
looks like.
Yeah, we're central to. Well, there are 20 teams in the league. Just off the top of my head, we're probably central to 14 of them. The longest trip we make is probably about 400 miles, 450.
Wow,
and
that's
we only do that twice a year. So again, from a travel perspective, we're right in the middle. You swing a cat, you're going to hit 13 other arenas around us, like Dave said. So, and I think, you know what, you could say this is the hockey cathedral in the Ontario Hockey League, and we're going to keep it just the way that she is. And I certainly wouldn't argue with you.
Yeah,
I really wouldn't. I'd love for it to stay.
yeah, I totally agree with that. Why? Because, like here in Indiana, I am surrounded by a lot of great gyms, and some of the older gyms, I hear the same arguments. We need something modern. This takes a lot of money to upkeep. But it's like, how many new gyms do you need? Can you just say, hey, we got this classic building. Let's make it a tourist center. Let's be proud of this place. Let's not knock it down to build something that's going to look like everybody else's facility. And, like you said, I've never been up to see a game there, but from what Dave tells me and from my experiences, I'd love to see a game there. I wouldn't want to go to an arena that looks like a multi-purpose facility that is designed with hockey but entertainment. It feels like Kittinger is hockey first. Is that right?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see, and I like to see that on the NHL level too, because we poke fun of the multi-purpose stadiums in baseball, but a lot of the arenas I go to in the NBA and NHL, they're all interchangeable. Not one feels like a hockey barn or a basketball palace. Maybe Indianapolis feels like a basketball place, but I keep those places up in Kittinger like that. Just embrace it.
Well, and see, we're talking about this like the sports fans that we are, right? We love our Fenways, we love our Wrigleys, we love our old Maple Leaf Gardens, the Montreal Forum.
Oh,
right?
Forum.
Yeah. The
I saw a
Spectrum
game
in
there.
Philly.
Favorite experience. Loved it.
What
And
was that? You
I'm
say
a-
the Spectrum?
Hershey Park Arena. Spectrum was nice. I used to see a lot of lacrosse games there.
Sure.
You woke up the Philly guy, Mike.
Let-
Well, I couldn't resist.
Oh boy.
let
Connie
me.
Mack.
Now that
those
you-
were good old days.
I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Now we have Mike on and all you guys. I was talking to Kelly about this actually earlier today. You mentioned the Spectrum, so this is a specific question. Can anybody ever think of another arena that was lettered instead of numbered?
What do you mean? Sections?
Yeah.
I never thought
Not a-
about
not
that
a big
until
one.
right now.
Well, sorry. Okay. I
Great
win.
question, though.
No. That's the answer I wanted, Dave. I got that. It was like Mike will know. You guys will know.
Go
and, there is
go
none.
to a view from my seat. Go and look at a couple of those, and I'm sure they exist, but
I didn't even know that.
I can't even think of it.
Yeah.
Dave, I just want to point out I didn't promise to be quiet tonight.
The Summit. Maybe the Summit had it. The
So,
Summit, the Centrum.
So, Mike, do you have any what kind of experience do you have going to like the wider Canadian Hockey League venues? Do you have any or some spots for Memorial Cup or?
Yeah, I actually got my start in a league just below this. Well, maybe 2 tiers below the Canadian Hockey League, but out in British Columbia, a league called the Kootenay International Junior Hockey League in BC. You're talking a lot of like Owen Sound style arenas out there. I was at Memorial Cup in Saskatoon, so that's the only Western building I've seen. And then I was at a World Junior Team Canada tune-up in Halifax as well. So I've seen just that one building in the Q, the one building in the Western League, and then everything in the Ontario Hockey League.
Well, the Q, which I probably got about 2/3 done. The Q is probably where the OHL used to be maybe 15 years ago. A lot of really old school barns with a lot of character. I've mentioned this before. In Ontario, amongst other places, it was big to have a big, huge portrait of the Queen. But in Chicoutimi, there was no portrait of the Queen there. There was a giant crucifix where, like, the Queen, you would think that portrait would go, and that just screams Quebec hockey, right? Like it's family church hockey all rolled into one, and there's a lot more character and uniqueness to those buildings, and a lot more age than we've got in the O right now.
Does the new Winnipeg building have the picture of the Queen still up?
Ooh,
When they moved to the new place?
that's a good question.
I remember just watching the old Winnipeg Jets when the Bruins go out there, and they'd always show that giant picture of the Queen they had on one end of the building up on the upper deck.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They have a giant statue of Timothy Eaton in the concourse. But I don't know. I can't remember if they have the Queen there or not. I guess
Or
I'll just have to
Winnipeg
go back.
Just several kilometers, right? Hop,
Couple.
skip, and a jump.
Couple kilometers.
That was a road trip, Dave. That was a
Yeah,
road
that
trip.
was
Oh,
that
boy.
was a road trip. And let me
That's
tell
why-
you
that's why he has a new car.
that drive from
You put
Thunder
like
Bay.
5,000 miles on your car in 1 week.
Thunder Bay to Marathon. That's a rough
Oh
spot.
my God!
You got to be real careful there. It's not Not a nice one.
No, these are real places. We don't make them up. They're actually
yeah.
exist. Yeah.
Kenora. Did you go by Kenora, Ontario?
Yes. I think that's where the Tim Hortons was.
What?
Yeah. Oh, Dan woke up again.
There's one in Fort Wayne too, Tim Hortons.
So I know, Mike, this would probably be difficult for you to pick out any favorites now because you're so closely linked to the team. But as a kid and as a fan of the Rangers, maybe before you were doing the broadcasting, did you have some favorite Rangers?
Some favorite Rangers. Yeah. It's funny in the heyday, the first heyday of the team that I experienced, which was the early 1980s. Brian Bellows should be the first name that comes to mind, but there was a guy that played on his wing, Jeff Larmer. And it's hard to figure for a guy with a hairline like mine, but it was the big mop of curly blonde hair under that helmet that was, and he is the only Ranger to score back-to-back 50-goal seasons, believe it or not. Jeff Larmer always caught my eye. But then we had Scott Stevens, we had Al McInnes, we had Paul Coffey for half a season here. But the Brian Bellows era absolutely stands out. And dependable Wendell Young in goal is a guy that I still put top 3, maybe definitely top 5 goaltenders of all time to come through the organization. And I fancied myself a bit of a goaltender in my younger days. Always loved Wendell Young as well.
Did you have any, or do you still have any cards from the trading cards from the police?
I have a set from the 89-90 Memorial Cup team, which features none other than Mike Torchia, my former broadcast partner on televised games here. And I love it. I loved the set, that team. I was a huge fan. And to get the chance to work with Mike for the number of years that I did and become a close friend of his, amazing. Loved it.
Now, I feel like I'm on an island on this one. I know the boys are definitely not with me. I would suspect that you would be on their side. Do you miss the Cooperalls?
Not a chance. What are you, nuts?
What the
Who misses
I
Cooperalls?
love the Cooperalls.
No,
Who misses Cooperalls?
Mike, I just want to be clear as producer of the show, I don't endorse like damn thing that Dave says.
I miss the Cooperalls.
You
And
miss
I-
wooden sticks too? What's the matter with you?
Yeah,
I do miss wooden sticks.
great.
They broke a heck of a lot less than these ones.
And I'm the one fan of one of 2 teams in the NHL that has to look back at the history books and go, oh yeah, we wore those pieces of crap. Yay!
Yes, you did.
So
No,
Were
I
Cooperalls
have-
a thing in the OHL?
Oh yeah.
Yes, the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
league.
Yep.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
When the
Absolutely.
Rangers won their first Memorial Cup,
Yep.
it was in the Cooperalls.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank God.
That,
Thank God.
those would have been my playing years because I'm at that age.
Thank God. The Flyers had 1 year, and Bobby Clark was like, "I'm not wearing slacks."
I have a card in Kitchener. The police used to give out Rangers trading cards. If you
They
saw a
and the guys,
policeman, and it was totally a
Sting?
a relation. No, not those police.
Oh.
It was totally a police relations,
Dream Police.
PR kind of thing. If you saw a policeman, you go and ask him for some Ranger cards. And thank God for
that's pretty
eBay
cool.
because I have a number of
That's
sets
kind of cool.
from those things, from those times, and I have an Al McInnes card with the Cooperalls and the big kind of not quite an afro, but pretty darn close to an afro, and that's that's right up there with my my early '80s Wayne Gretzky cards.
We had Al here not too long ago. His son, of course, played with the Rangers, a former captain of the Rangers, and Al was back just kind of bird dogging a game just this season, and so we had him on to talk about the Stanley Cup, obviously with the Blues, and what a gentleman. I was a little intimidated going up to him before the game to see if he'd come on our hack little radio broadcast in Kitchener, but he could not have been more accommodating. Great guy.
And did you see he hit 100 miles an
Yes.
hour at All-Star? Oh my gosh, he was what, 53 or something like that?
Yeah.
And he can still shoot at 100 miles an hour. That's crazy.
Try that, young men.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I don't know why anybody would ever want to become a goalie. There's got to be something going on wrong.
All right, I was defense, and I barely played. I was done when I was 18 because of knee injuries, and I had to play goalie once, and never did it again. Nope. No, thank you. No how. I can't imagine what that's like at a professional level. There's no way. There's no chance in hell.
Oh, funny quick story from the NWHL All-Star game last week. One of the things was the hardest shot competition. And the Warrior Ice Arena is very basic. There was no facilities or anything. So they're getting ready to do the hardest shot competition. We're like, how the heck are they going to measure these shots? And I looked over to the net. They were shooting to my left. And there's our GM crouched down behind the net with a radar gun pointing it. That's how they measured the hardest shot competition at the skills.
Many hats.
So there you go. Al McInnes in the Cooperalls.
God damn it, those are disgusting.
Amazing.
With the hair.
No.
Sweet.
No, those pants.
One day, has anybody ever brought that look back for a special promotional night?
Cooperalls.
They brought those jerseys back, but
Or the Cooperalls?
not the Cooperalls.
No.
All right, Cooperalls talk is banned on this show from here on out.
See, that reminds me of the roller hockey league from the 90s, but I
That's
did
coming
want to
back.
point. Yeah. I heard St. Louis has a team.
Yeah, that's coming
The
back.
Vipers.
The roller hockey's coming back, baby.
Yeah.
Bring on the
I'll say.
Bulldogs.
There's
Hell
the
yeah.
red Cooperalls.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Bulldogs.
That's awesome.
Actually, I saw the Bulldogs down in the Spectrum. I did want to point this out. Bob Chase was the radio voice of the Fort Wayne Comets for 63 years, 1953 to 2016.
Wow.
Beautiful voice Mr. Chase had.
That's amazing.
And he had offers to go to many NHL franchises, but he stayed in Fort Wayne. And when you used to go to games, you just hear his voice in certain parts of the arena. And it was so soothing, so touching. So, yeah, that's amazing to keep that job for 63 years.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No, they don't. Those are legends.
Hopefully the
Those
guy
are
from
legends.
Buffalo doesn't break that record, please.
What's he been doing, 50 years?
I don't want to talk about it.
No, okay.
Mike, I think we've gotten so far off the topic here that I think that's my cue to probably wrap this conversation up before we get into an area we don't want to be. So,
They're already there.
Yeah, no, we've been worse. Trust me, we've been
Yeah,
worse.
that's true.
No, put the pork roll down. Mike.
What?
So Mike, thanks for coming on and joining us. This was great to talk to you. And do you want to shout out your social media presence?
Absolutely. And I want you to know that when you find me on Twitter at Farwell_OHL or on Instagram at Farwell_WR, that's Far, Farwell. You're not going to find any pictures of Cooperalls or any discussion of Cooperalls
Thank
ever.
God. Why?
Shucks.
Well, hey, we got a fan of Cooperalls on this panel, so it can't be all bad.
No, it's
The
mostly
IHL
bad.
had Cooperalls too.
No,
for that.
no,
Oh, wow.
no. Cooperalls are mostly bad.
How about Zubaz?
No, Paul, please. Paul, take it back before Mark starts talking again.
Take it back.
Okay.
Turn it off.
So,
Shut it
Mike,
off.
Mike, what were those? What was that Twitter handle again?
Farwell_OHL. Instagram Farwell_WR.
All right. So yeah, Mike, thanks again, and we'd love to have you on. These were some great stories, and we'd love to do it again sometime.
Guys, thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. Anytime.
All right. Thank you.
And for everybody listening, be sure to check out our website, stadiumjourney.com. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Stadium Journey. Real easy to remember. You can find the Stadium Journey podcast, Obey the Puck, all of HIAC's great content at thebradyhicks.com, or watch our podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/danlaw83. Follow HIAC Talk Radio at HIAC Talk Radio. So as we wrap it up, do we have anything planned for the upcoming fortnight? Dan, how about you? Where can our listeners follow you, and are you going anywhere fun?
No, I'm not going anywhere yet. Anywhere place yet. I can't speak. Fortnite. I'm going to play Fortnite. It's not Taylor Ham. It says pork roll on the box. Shut up, Mark. Okay. I am actually going. I'm setting my Philadelphia Eagles feet inside of FedEx Field in June. For not football, thankfully, for monster trucks. So you're going to get a full, non-biased review of the garbage heap that I've heard is FedEx Field.
I think that was our second lowest ranked NFL venue.
It
Yeah,
should be.
Oakland,
Well,
Oakland was one. Yeah.
there's not many people that even like. There's not even people who are Redskins fans that like that stadium.
Well, that's why people like this XFL team, because they love the stadium. It's in a better location.
I've heard that Philadelphia has registered a domain.
Yeah. I heard them in Birmingham.
The MLL is getting a new team in Philly.
The Barrage.
The Barrage.
They're back.
So,
That-
Mark,
that's-
how about you?
How about me?
Where you heading the next couple of weeks? Where can our listeners follow your adventure?
Well, this weekend I will be I'll be at the Arena Gym. That's the name of the building. The Arena Gym. That's the home of the Benton Central High School basketball program. And then at the Munster Gymnasium in Munster, Indiana. And just down the road is Three Floyds Brewery, so that'd be fun. And then on Saturday and Sunday, Chicago State Cougars going to finally review the Jones Convocation Center. And then Valparaiso, they have a basketball game too at the Athletics Recreation Center. The Crusaders, we need to update that review. So that'd be 4 buildings this weekend alone. Don't know what I'm doing next weekend, but I'm
Resting,
pretty
I think.
booked.
Resting.
I'm pretty booked. So
A
check
load
me.
management day.
You know what? You save gas, you save time. The only problem is you probably zip through some of these towns a little bit quicker than you want to. But I've been to Valpo, the Chicago State area. I've been to as well. I know Munster. I just don't know Benton Central. That's in Oxford, Indiana. I don't know that town that well. Probably like most Indiana towns, there's probably not much going on in some of these small rural towns. But check out the videos, the photos, anything else I may encounter on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube at Ballpark Hunter.
By the way, we almost made this whole episode without any technical difficulties, and then my mic unplugged. I'm at DanLaw 83, by the way.
Oh, perfect. That's good to know.
Dave, how about you? Where are you heading the next couple of weeks?
Well, this weekend I am hitting the Buffalo Sabres at KeyBank Arena, and then after that, I'm not really sure. It's a little bit up in the air. I'm hoping to hit the Guelph Storm at the Sleeman Center and the new Rochester Nighthawks.
Yeah,
The different Rochester Nighthawks, the older Rochester, I don't know,
The
the
1-7.
Rochester Nighthawks at Blue Cross Arena.
Won their first game.
All
This week.
that at ProFan 9.
Right. The old Rochester Nighthawks are now in Halifax, correct?
That is true.
That's right.
All right. So I guess it's my turn. Let's see. I'm going to be busy the next couple of weeks. Friday night, I'm heading up to Hamel Court to check out the newest Division I basketball team, the Merrimack Warriors. Unfortunately, they moved their game from 7 o'clock, which would have been nice, to 5 o'clock. So I've got to haul butt out of work early to fight Boston traffic to get to the other side of Boston from where I'm going to be.
Oh, that should be fun.
Yeah, so that's Friday. Saturday, I'm doing a triple header. UMass Dartmouth basketball has their season finales, men's and women's, Saturday afternoon. It's senior day. And then after that, I head up to the Dunk for the Providence Bruins. Sunday, back up to Bryant in Smithfield, Rhode Island, doing a Bryant basketball game. And then, let's see, next weekend is the Little East Tournament, so I may be doing some PA for a couple of games during the week. Next Saturday, doing a doubleheader up at the University of New Hampshire, doing basketball in the afternoon and hockey at night. And then Sunday, going down to Quinnipiac to do a basketball game. So I'm going to be a little bit busy. And Mark, you mentioned beer a little while ago. Dave, after we left each other on Sunday, I said I was going to go over to City Steam and pick up a 6-pack of one of my favorite craft beers, the Naughty Nurse. They can't sell beer in Connecticut after 6 p.m. on a Sunday. Guess what time I walked through the door?
It must have been like 5 after 6.
Yeah, it was like 6:05, so I couldn't bring any beer back with me. It was very
That's terrible.
heartbroken. It was a long ride back to Massachusetts
Damn.
from Hartford.
That happened to me.
Oh,
That happened to me in Wisconsin. The place closed at 9 o'clock. I couldn't get my New Glarus, Spotted Cow, and other varieties. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, and you can follow all my adventures, my travels at Puckman RI. And so thank you all for listening. For Mike Farwell, for Dan Calachico, Mark Viquez, and Dave Cotney, I'm Paul Baker, wishing you all close games and safe journeys.